Alright guys, we are back in my car for another video, and today we are going to be talking about preparing your car for the track. And by track, I mean a road course, tracks with turns, where you typically do 20 to 30 minute sessions at a time. This can be something that's really stressful on a car, so it's important to make sure that your car is prepared and up to the task before you go to your first event. I think a lot of people have misconceptions about what's truly needed for these cars just to make it through your track day, because really that's the priority. There are a lot of upgrades and things that can make your car fast, but the most important thing is to bring your car home in one piece and make it through the track day without any issues. So that's what I'm going to prioritize in this video, and we're basically going to talk about what you need for your car to get through your track day so that you can have a good, safe, and fun experience. So hopefully you guys find this video useful. Now, as always, for everybody that's new to the channel, I create these videos to help keep you updated on the latest developments in our community, as well as discuss technical topics so that we have a better understanding of how our engines work. So if you're interested in more videos like that, be sure to subscribe because there will be a lot more coming out in the future. So the first and most important thing, which should be obvious, is you need to be up to date on your maintenance. Do everything that you need to make sure that your car is healthy. Again, the priority here is to make it through your track day, because there are a lot of things that can make your car fast, but without getting a good baseline and just making sure that the car can get through it, there's no real point in upgrading parts yet. So I highly recommend going through your maintenance intervals and making sure that you tackle anything that is due before or around the time, even a little bit after when your actual track day is. So for example, I had an oil change that was scheduled for about 2 months after my track day. I just went ahead and did it early, get that out of the way, so when you go to the track, you have nice fresh oil, fresh filters, and everything is ready to take a beating. So don't be lazy on this stuff. Same thing for any other filters or fluids in your car. I also did like my transmission service. I'm not sure if it needed a service. I don't know if the previous owners did it, but just to be safe, I did it to make sure that I could get through the track day. So stuff like that should be on your mind to make sure that the car is up to the task, because that's the priority. If not, then you run into overheating issues, oil consumption issues, leaks, all these kinds of problems that can cause your track day to be cut short. Now, the next thing that I recommend, which was actually required for the event I was going to, is to get a pre-inspection. And what that means is you can basically take your car to a shop or even the dealership, and they will just give everything a once-over. They'll take off all the panels under the car and go through all of your bolts, make sure nothing's loose, nothing's leaking, nothing is potentially hazardous or dangerous, and that will just again give you the extra confidence you need to know that the car is ready for your first track day. When I took mine, I actually had to fix an oil leak because there was oil leaking from one of the oil drain lines that I didn't notice, so I was able to address that in advance, so that was nice. And also I actually had to switch my VTA PCV setup to a catch can setup. And that's because a lot of tracks don't allow you to run dump tubes. If your car is pushing oil, then that's basically just leaving an oil slick all over the track. Naturally, I have a B58, not an N54, so my hoses are always dry and I don't have any blow-by. But just in case, and based off the principle, they don't allow you to run those dump tubes. So I had to convert my setup to the catch can setup to make sure that I was meeting their requirements. And just keep in mind, you got to do this pre-inspection, because when you go to the track, they'll do an inspection anyway, and if they see something like that after you've driven 2-3 hours or whatever to get there, you're not going to get on the track, and that would be really annoying. So it's much better to pay 100, 150 bucks for a qualified shop to give you a once-over, and make sure that when you get up there, you're not going to get turned away for something stupid. Now, there are 2 upgrades that I recommend based on my experience of taking the car completely stock. The first one is I quickly found the limits of the stock brake pads, and they're just not really up to the task of giving you consistent braking performance with the back-to-back heavy braking that you'll experience at the track. Once they get really hot, they begin to fade, the pedal gets soft, and then you run a risk of basically having no brakes when you're going into a high-speed turn, which of course would give you a really bad time. So I highly recommend getting some upgraded brake pads. The good news is with our cars and the Brembos that they come with, it's really easy to change when you get to the track, so you can run your daily pads, your street pads up there. When you get there, swap to the race pads, They're going to make a lot of dust. They're going to squeal. That's how a performance pad is. But when you're done, switch back to your street pads and you can have nice, quiet, dust-free driving on your way back home. So yeah, just bring an extra set of brake pads, if not upgrade the brake pads before you go, to make sure that you don't run into brake fade issues. Another thing that I did was I upgraded my brake fluid. I can't actually prove that it's going to boil over or cause any issues, but if your brakes are able to absorb more heat, then it's going to push more heat out to the rest of the system. And you don't want your brake fluid to hit its limit, because that can cause an even more catastrophic failure. So I went ahead and upgraded to Type 200 fluid. It's like 20 bucks for a liter, and it's on FCP Euro, so you can get free lifetime replacement. So it's kind of a win-win. And the last thing that I recommend are some kind of tires. If you don't already have summer tires, get some summer tires. The stock all seasons that I drove on worked okay, but they can get greasy, and when they get too hot, they begin coming apart. So you really want a summer tire that's designed to handle the extra heat that's going to be going through your tires as you're going around turns and doing heavy braking and all of this stuff. Again, it does give you a performance improvement, but this isn't about the performance improvement. This is about getting through the track day without completely demolishing your tires and having to drive back on cords. Now also make sure that you have all of the necessary safety equipment. So, you know, good quality seat belts if they're not OEM. Make sure you have certified harnesses. You're going to need a certified helmet, so make sure that it's like 5 or 10 years depending on the helmet you go with. It needs to be certified. So I just got a new helmet to make sure that I meet the certification, and that just made sure I was good to go. Everybody doesn't check the sticker, but some people do, and it's just better to be safe than sorry. Plus, the newer helmets are safer. So of course, either way, it's good for you and your noggin to make sure that you have the newest and best safety equipment possible. Also, if you guys do have a harness, which I don't have, I highly recommend a Hans device. You don't want to run into an issue where your car goes off track or you hit something and your neck basically flies forward while holding your body in place. You really need that neck restraint so that it keeps your head on your body and you don't potentially damage something like your spine. If you guys have seen the horror stories, you know how bad that can be, and it can literally leave you paralyzed. So usually I recommend just a normal 3-point belt if you're just going to have a helmet, or if you're getting a harness, then you need to get that Hans device to keep you safe. Then there's a lot of stuff that you can bring for fun. You know, you want any kind of video equipment that you want. I brought my GoPro, I brought my phone with a mount and stuff, so of course I could film a video at the track. But it's really cool to see all of the videos back to back, especially the night after your first day. You can kind of see what you did right, what you did wrong, and make adjustments the next day. I also recommend downloading an app that can help you keep your times. I use Harry's Lap Timer, and it's worked great for me for several years. There are a lot of different options out there, and all of them work pretty well. It can get very expensive if you get, you know, aftermarket, like standalone solutions, but the phone apps typically work pretty well for me, and I'm able to sync it up with my GoPro and stuff. So that's how I made all the overlay videos you guys saw. And yeah, you know, just anything that you think you want to have in advance, I highly recommend getting it, testing it, making sure it all works. And then when you get to the track day, all you really need to do is turn it on and go. You also probably want to bring some diagnostic equipment. So if you have a tune on your car, I typically recommend flashing back to stock for your first track day, but you still want to have your OBD adapter and everything available. So if you have any issues, you can scan for codes, check and see what's going on. If you want to run logs, you can do that as well. Unfortunately, I couldn't run logs and, you know, do my timed lap, so I kind of picked my poison there and used Harry's Lap Timer instead. But if you want to do logs, it's a really good thing to do to make sure that you're not seeing any excessive temperatures or anything that could cause issues on your car and cause you to have a bad day. The stock tune, I would say, is pretty low risk, but if you're going to be pushing the car with an upgraded tune or an upgraded turbo or something like that, then running some logs will give you a lot more confidence. Now, on top of that, of course, you want to bring a lot of tools and anything that you think you might need to do quick repairs. Any extra parts that you have, it's also a good idea. I pretty much brought everything that I had in my garage that was mobile. So of course I brought a jack and jack stands. I brought all of my sockets, my Torx, my e-Torx. I brought my punch tool and a hammer to make sure that I can actually swap my brake pads at the track. If you need to use the rear caliper tool, like if you guys have a single piston caliper in the back, rent out the tool from AutoZone or whatever so that you can retract the piston and you can change your brakes that way as well. Of course, make sure you bring your torque wrench so that you know you can torque your wheels down properly. Bring a tire pressure gauge so you can check your tire pressure. You can bring an impact wrench as well. It does make wheel changes easier, even though I don't recommend relying on it to actually torque your wheels. But just to zip the nuts on and off, you know, it does make the process a lot faster between sessions. And you're also going to want to check your torque between sessions, because when you're really pushing your car, it's going to try to push the wheels off of the car. So usually every 3 or 4 sessions, I check my torque and just double check to make sure the nuts haven't gotten loose. Bring some extra fluid, so you know, an extra gallon of oil, an extra gallon of coolant just in case. I brought spark plugs because I had extras. If you have a PCV diaphragm, you can bring one of those. If you have an injector, you can bring one of those. Basically anything that you think could potentially fail on the way there or back, you know, feel free to grab some extra parts and bring it with you. Now keep in mind, when I think of these things, I'm looking at it as a way to get back home, right? So I bring my tire repair kit because if I get a flat, I want to be able to repair my tire and get back home. It's not just about beating on the car on the track and getting back out there. If you guys are really ambitious, naturally you can do that yourself, but I usually try to be a little more cautious on my end. And of course, if you're going to be going to your first day and they've got classes, bring a notepad and a pen. Bring some things where you can just really learn as much as possible, take notes. You should have a good instructor that can give you some advice you probably want to leave with. So just make sure that you are going in ready to absorb a lot of information, get as much seat time as possible, and worry about feeling out the car and, like I said, being safe more than you're worried about just being as fast as possible. And if you follow all of that, you'll definitely have a great day. Of course, keep in mind as you're going through it, once you start getting faster and hitting those limits, that's a great time to start evaluating what you want to do next. But get some baseline seat time with the car as stock as possible. Figure out your driving style, see what works and what doesn't, and then you'll know what kind of upgrades you want to put on your car next. So yeah, I think that's it for this video. Thank you guys for watching, and I hope this helps. And if you have any other questions or comments, leave them down below.